Title: The Calabash of Forgotten Tears. Long before roads cut through forests and before names were written on paper, there lay a land called Nabari, a valley cradled between two ancient hills. The people of Nabari believed the land was alive. The wind carried messages. The rivers remembered names, and the ancestors never truly left. In this land was born a boy named Kato on a night when the moon hid her face and the owls cried longer than usual. The elders whispered among themselves as they gathered outside the hut of his mother. "This child comes with a heavy spirit," one old woman said, tightening her wrapper. "No," another replied, shaking her head. "He comes with a listening heart." Kato's mother, Nambi, died before the sun rose. By morning, the village drums no longer celebrated life. They announced loss. The child survived, but his first breath came wrapped in grief. Kato grew up in the care of his grandmother, Mama Naku, a woman whose back was bent by age but whose eyes still shone like morning dew. She spoke little, but when she did, the children fell silent. "Kato," she often said, "do not fear silence. That is where truth hides." The boy was different from the others. While children chased goats and wrestled in dust, Kato sat by the river, listening. He listened to water striking stones, to leaves arguing with the wind, to echoes in the hills. Sometimes he spoke to no one at all. The villagers noticed. "Why does that child behave like an old man?" they murmured. "He does not laugh. He does not fight. He does not even cry." But they did not know that Kato cried when no one watched. At night, when the firewood crackled low, Kato dreamed of a woman singing softly songs he had never been taught but somehow knew. He would wake with tears on his cheeks and questions heavy in his chest. One evening, during the season of long drought, the river shrank until its stones stood naked under the sun. Crops failed, children coughed. Even prayers sounded tired. The elders gathered beneath the great Mukasa tree, the oldest tree in Nabari. Its roots twisted like sleeping snakes, and legends said it drank from the world beneath the world. "We must consult the ancestors," the chief declared. "This drought is not ordinary." A sacrifice was prepared, drums were beaten. Smoke rose into the sky, yet nothing changed. That night, as Kato slept near the dying fire, the wind entered the hut and called his name. "Kato." He sat up, heart pounding. "Kato, son of Nambi." The wind was warm, not frightening. It smelled of rain that had not fallen. "Follow the river when the moon is half," it whispered. "There is something buried that must be remembered." By morning, Kato's eyes carried a strange certainty. "Mama," he said softly, "I must walk tomorrow." She studied him for a long time, then nodded. "The path has chosen you." She reached behind her sleeping mat and brought out an old, cracked calabash wrapped in bark cloth. "This belonged to your mother," she said. "It holds what tears cannot." Kato did not understand, but he accepted it. As the half-moon rose that night, the boy stepped away from the village barefoot, carrying the calabash against his chest. The wind followed him, the ancestors watched, and Nabari held its breath.
Kato walked until the sounds of Nabari faded behind him. The night insects sang louder the deeper he went, and the moonlight thinned as the path narrowed into the forest called Lugogo Lwamezmu, the Forest of Spirits. Every child in Nabari knew the warnings. Do not enter Lugogo alone. The forest knows your secrets. It shows you who you truly are. Yet Kato did not turn back. The trees rose tall and close, their branches twisting together like elders in secret conversation. The air grew heavy. Each step felt watched. The wind that had guided him from the village fell silent, as though testing his courage. Kato tightened his grip on the calabash. "Mother," he whispered into the darkness, "if you walk with me, do not leave me now." The forest answered not with words, but with memory. Suddenly, Kato was no longer walking forward. He was standing still, yet scenes unfolded around him like smoke becoming shape. He saw himself as a small boy, sitting alone while other children laughed. He felt again the sting of their whispers. Motherless, quiet like a ghost. Too strange to trust. His chest tightened. The forest had reached into his heart and pulled out his buried pain. "Why do you show me this?" Kato cried out. A voice rose from the trees deep, old, neither male nor female. Because you carry wounds you have not faced, it said. And wounds ignored become poison. The ground beneath him shifted. The forest path disappeared. In its place stood a clearing where 3 paths lay before him. One path was wide and smooth, glowing softly. The second was narrow and dark, filled with thorns. The third led nowhere, it simply ended in shadows. Choose, the forest said. Kato hesitated. His legs trembled. He wanted the smooth path, the one that promised ease. But his grandmother's voice echoed in his spirit. The easy road feeds the body. The true road feeds the soul. He stepped toward the narrow, thorny path. The forest roared in approval. As he walked, thorns tore at his skin. Branches scratched his face, pain burned his feet. But with every wound, something strange happened. The calabash grew warmer, almost alive against his chest. At last, exhausted, Kato fell to his knees. I am only a child, he sobbed. Why choose me? The trees bent closer, their leaves whispering. Because you listen, because you carry sorrow without hatred, because you have not hardened your heart. Then the forest showed him one final vision. He saw Nabari dry, broken, its people bent under hunger. But he also saw another future, green fields, laughter, drums beating in celebration. Between the two futures stood a single choice, his courage. When the vision faded, the forest slowly opened, revealing a narrow river glowing under moonlight. The river will lead you, the voice said. But remember this, Kato. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. The wind returned, gentle and warm, brushing his wounds until the pain eased. Kato rose to his feet, no longer trembling. He was still afraid, but his fear no longer ruled him. As he stepped out of the forest, he did not realize that something had changed. His shadow now walked slightly ahead of him, not behind. And far away, unseen eyes watched with interest. The journey had only begun.
Dawn did not arrive the way Kato expected. There were no birds to announce it, no gradual warming of the air. Instead, light simply appeared, pale and uncertain, as though the sun itself feared this land. Kato stood at the edge of the glowing river, its surface smooth like polished stone, reflecting not his face, but his memories. He knelt and touched the water. It was warm. Rivers are not meant to be warm, he whispered. They are warm when they remember, a voice answered behind him. Kato spun around. She stood a few steps away, tall, wrapped in faded bark cloth, her hair braided with white cowries. Her face was young and old at the same time, beautiful yet heavy with sorrow. But what froze Kato's breath in his chest was not her appearance. It was her feet. They touched the ground, but she cast no shadow. Kato staggered back. You are not human. The woman studied him gently. Neither are you only human, child of Nambi. Fear rose in him, sharp and fast. He clutched the calabash. Who are you? She turned toward the river. I am called Nalubega. Once I was a daughter of Nabiria. Now, I am what remains when a people forget their pain instead of healing it. Kato's heart thudded loudly in his ears. Are you a spirit? I am a memory, she replied. And memory can walk. She stepped closer. Still no shadow followed her. You crossed the forest, Nalubega continued. Few do. Fewer still choose the thorned path. I had no choice, Kato said quietly. She smiled sadly. You always have a choice. You simply chose truth. Nalubega gestured toward the river. Look, Kato obeyed. The water darkened, then began to move. Images rise from its depths like smoke becoming flesh. He saw Nabiria, lush and green, rivers full, granaries heavy with grain. People danced, drums thundered joy. Children ran freely. Then the images shifted. He saw betrayal, brothers fighting brothers, elders selling land meant for unborn children, rituals performed for greed, not gratitude, promises broken with the ancestors. Then came suffering, slow, silent, and ignored. The river clouded with tears. What is this? Kato whispered. This, Nalubega said, is the truth your people buried. She knelt beside him. Long ago, when Nabiria first began to suffer, the ancestors sent warnings, dreams, illness, strange signs. But the people refused to listen. They chose pride. And you? Kato asked. What happened to you? Nalubega's eyes darkened. I was chosen, she said, like you. Her words settled heavy between them. I was young, she continued. I listened to the wind. I heard the land crying. I spoke, but no one believed me. They called me cursed, dangerous. They silenced me. Kato felt his throat tighten. Silenced? How? Nalubega stood and turned away. Some wounds do not need details. The river showed another image. Nalubega standing alone beneath the mukasa tree, hands raised, pleading. Then darkness swallowed the vision. When I died, she said softly, my shadow remained behind. A shadow is a sign of belonging. I was denied that. Kato's tears fell into the river, causing ripples. Why show me this? He asked. Nalubega faced him fully now. Because your journey will fail if you seek only to fix the land and ignore the pain beneath it. She pointed at the calabash. Do you know what you carry? Kato shook his head. She reached out, touching the cracked surface. The calabash trembled and slowly opened itself. Inside was no emptiness but tears. Clear, shining, endless. These are the forgotten tears of Nibiria, Nalubega said. Tears never cried, grief never spoken, truth swallowed. Kato gasped. Why give this to me? Because healing does not begin with strength, she replied. It begins with courage to feel. The ground shook gently. The wind circled them. But listen well, Kato, Nalubega warned. This calabash is heavy. If you open it before you are ready, it will drown you. Fear crept back into his chest. Then how will I know when I am ready? Nalubega smiled, this time with hope. When you are willing to break, silence stretched between them. Finally, Nalubega stepped back toward the river. Her form began to fade like mist touched by sun. Will I see you again? Kato asked urgently. If you succeed, she said, I will regain my shadow. And if I fail? She did not answer. Before disappearing completely, she left him with one final warning. Do not try to be a hero, Kato. Heroes seek praise, healers accept pain. The river calmed, the forest breathed. Kato stood alone again, but he was no longer the same boy who had entered the forest. He now carried a people's sorrow, and far away in Nibiria, the wind began to blow.
The path back to Nabri felt longer than the journey away. Kato walked for 2 days beneath a sky that refused to give rain. Dust clung to his feet. Hunger gnawed at his belly, and with every step, the calabash against his chest grew heavier, not in weight, but in presence. It whispered Dot not in words at first, but in feelings. Grief, regret, longing. Dot. By the time the village huts appeared at the horizon, Kato's heart trembled. He was no longer sure he was strong enough to carry what he had been given. The people of Nabri noticed him immediately. Is that not Nabi's child? The strange boy has returned. Where has he been wandering? He did not answer. He walked straight to the Mukasa tree, its massive roots still gripping the earth like ancient hands. The elders gathered quickly. Drought had sharpened their tempers. Kato, the chief, said sternly, You left without permission. I followed the river, Kato replied quietly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The river leads to death. One spat. Or madness, said another. Kato lifted the calabash. It leads to truth. Laughter followed, bitter, tired laughter. What can a child teach us? A woman cried, Our children are hungry. Kato felt the familiar urge to shrink, to disappear into silence. His knees weakened. The calabash throbbed, warm against his ribs. Open me, it seemed to say, but Nalubaga's warning echoed in his mind. If you open it before you are ready, it will drown you. The chief struck his staff against the ground. Speak quickly, boy, Kato swallowed. Our land suffers because we buried our pain instead of healing it. The crowd erupted. Pain? We need rain, not stories. This drought is punishment, not memory. Their words pierced him. Shame crept in, hot and choking. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was only a foolish child chasing ghosts. That night, Kato sat alone near his grandmother's old hut. Mama Naku had passed into the ancestor world during his journey. No farewell. No final words. The loneliness crushed him. Tears fell freely, now tears he had held back his entire life. They splashed onto the calabash. It cracked. A soft glow spilled out, lighting the dark. Kato froze. The air thickened. The wind circled. From the calabash rose voices, not loud, not angry, but aching. Voices of mothers who had lost children. Voices of elders silenced by pride. Voices of land taken, promises broken, love withheld. Kato clutched his chest, gasping. "I cannot hold all this," he cried. "I am breaking." The calabash answered this time in words. "Break," it said gently. "That is how healing enters." The ground beneath him trembled. The village stirred. People ran toward the light. They arrived breathless, stunned by what they saw, visions pouring into the air like smoke becoming memory. They saw their own grief. A man saw the brother he betrayed. A woman saw the daughter she had never forgiven. An elder saw the land he sold for praise. Cries rose, knees fell. Pride shattered. Rain clouds gathered without warning. Naliobiga's voice echoed softly through the wind. When truth is spoken, the earth listens. Kato collapsed as rain finally fell, heavy, cleansing, unstoppable. In the chaos of tears and rain, something else happened. A shadow formed beside Kato, not his own, a woman's. Naliobiga stood beneath the mukasa tree, whole at last, her feet touching the earth, and this time her shadow remained. She nodded at Kato, gratitude shining in her eyes. The drought broke, but Kato lay unconscious, emptied. For healing to spread, the healer had to give everything. Chapter 5. The Boy Who Became a River. Kato slept for 3 days and 3 nights. During that time, the rain did not stop. It fell softly at first, then steadily, soaking the cracked earth of Nabri until the dust became mud, and the mud became promise. Dry riverbeds filled, leaves lifted their heads. Seeds long forgotten beneath the soil stirred and breathed again. The people gathered near Kato's resting place, speaking in whispers. No one laughed. No one argued. Something sacred had passed through the village, and it demanded reverence. On the 4th morning, Kato opened his eyes. The first thing he felt was not pain, but lightness. The calabash lay beside him, whole again, its cracks sealed as though they had never existed. It was quiet now. Empty. At peace. Maama Naka sat near him, but not as she had been. She was younger, straighter. Her eyes shone with the calm of the ancestor world. "You stayed," Kato whispered, tears filling his eyes. She smiled. "I stayed because you listened." He tried to sit up, but she gently pressed him back. "Rest, child. The land is still healing." "Did I fail?" Kato asked. "I broke. I could not hold everything." Mama Naku laughed softly. "That is why you succeeded." She leaned closer. "Rivers do not carry water by being strong. They carry it by flowing." When she faded, the hut filled with morning light. Kato stepped outside later that day. Nabri no longer looked the same. Green pushed through the earth everywhere, between huts, along paths, beside doorways. Children splashed in puddles, laughing with a joy that sounded new. The river sang loudly, no longer ashamed of its voice. The people watched Kato with eyes full of gratitude and humility. The chief approached him slowly and knelt. "We were blind," he said. "You showed us without anger. Forgive us." Kato shook his head. "Healing is not forgiveness alone," he said softly. "It is remembering together." The elders agreed to change. Stories once buried were spoken aloud beneath the mukasa tree. Old wrongs were confessed. Land taken unjustly was returned. Rituals were restored not for pride, but for gratitude. And Naliobiga? She walked freely now among the people, not as a spirit to fear, but as a presence to honor. Her shadow followed her everywhere. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she wept. Both were signs of life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with gold, Nalubega stood beside Kato at the riverbank. "You will not stay," she said. It was not a question. Kato nodded. "The river does not remain in one place." She placed a hand over his heart. "Then go. But know this, wherever you walk, truth will follow." Before leaving, Kato knelt and dipped his hands into the river. The water flowed through his fingers, cool and alive. "I was a boy who listened," he whispered. "Now let me be a river that teaches." Years passed. Travelers spoke of a young man who appeared where villages were hurting. He never demanded leadership. He never stayed long. But after he left, things changed. Families spoke, land healed, and silence lost its power. They stopped calling him Kato. They called him the one who carries water. And in Nabri, when elders tell this story by firelight, they always end the same way. Do not ignore the quiet child. Do not silence the one who listens. And never bury your tears. For tears, when honored, become rivers. And when the wind passes through the hills at night, carrying the scent of rain, the people say softly, "He is still walking the end."